Welcome to Skip the Queue, a podcast for people working in or working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Kelly Molson. Each episode, I speak with industry experts from the attractions world. In today's episode, I speak with Roy Murphy from Synthetic, the chatbot and voice agency. We discuss the opportunity for exciting voice strategies for attractions and also how attractions can derive maximum value from chatbots. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and all the usual channels by searching Skip the Queue. Roy, welcome to the Skip the Queue podcast. It's good to have you on today.
Hello, Kelly. Looking forward to talking to you on the legendary Skip the Queue podcast. This will be a great conversation.
You are very kind indeed. Now, as you know, you've listened to a few of these episodes, and you know that I start off with a few icebreaker questions, which you don't get to prep. Are you ready?
I am as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. All right. What is the worst job that you've ever had?
The worst job I've ever had is probably when I was very young on a pitch and putt golf course. Not because the pitch and putt wasn't bad itself. It was a summer job. It's pretty cool. Quite enjoyed the job. But it was in a small hut I lived in Ireland, in Braes, in South Dublin, in Ireland many years ago. And the problem with the job was that it was in a small hut on the seafront outside a pub. And after the pub, everyone would come into the hut and kick it in and not only take the golf equipment out onto the kind of fairway in front of the promenade, they'd also do some not very nice things and use it as a toilet.
Oh, no. Oh, that is horrible.
So for that reason, I've got a few other ones, but that's probably my top of the list, I think.
Oh, God.
Let's move on.
So, shall we?
Let's move on.
Sorry.
I don't know why I told you that. That's awful, isn't it?
Okay. Sorry, it's really made me chuckle. I feel bad that I'm laughing at your unfortunate job. Okay.
My hands are clean now, though. My hands are clean now.
Good, glad. Hygiene is very important. Which cartoon character do you wish was real?
Ooh, Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah.
Just for the mayhem, I think. I loved it as a kid. I'm not sure if it's appropriate now, but in terms of the name and so on, but just that whole kind of whirling dervish and let it loose on various politicians.
Yeah. If you had your own late night talk show, who would be the first person that you'd invite on as a guest?
Andrew Ridgeley.
And for what reason?
I read his biography last year and I found it absolutely fascinating. I love those stories behind the fame. Mm-hmm. And actually came across that he was actually quite talented. You wouldn't have thought that from his public persona, but actually as a songwriter and a musician, he gets kind of a bad rep. George Michael, God bless, was so talented and popular. And actually, I think the stories behind the stories are sometimes more interesting. So I'd like to have him on and tell his side of the story face to face. That
would be a great guest. I have to say that I was a massive Wham fan as well, so I would be watching that. I know. I can't help it. Tell me something that is true that almost nobody agrees with you on. So your unpopular opinion.
Oh, I've got lots of those.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
I like being contrary. I posit that winter doesn't exist.
Okay.
I have a theory.
You need to explain this theory. Because it feels very wintry at the moment.
Well, I'm not a flat earther, but I have a theory. Let me run it past you, see what you think. Typically, there's 4 seasons in a year. I get that. And my own way of thinking is, and I'm an optimist and I hate winter, by the way, just to set the groundwork. So summer doesn't end until September in my book, right? Because ultimately you always want an Indian summer and September's still summer in my book. Autumn is October, November and part of December. Because October, November are kind of autumnish and December is a month of Fridays, right? So December isn't winter either. On the 21st of December, it's the winter equinox and it gets lighter 1 minute per day. So therefore, by the time you're into the 21st of December, forget about Christmas, that's always fun. By the time you get to 1st of January, the days are getting lighter every day by a minute. Therefore, winter doesn't exist. Discuss.
I'm going to disagree, but I'm going to do it based. I know where you're going. I understand where you're going with the equinox, but the weather in January is horrendous, and you could not associate that with any other month other than winter.
Disagree.
Like it's always miserable. It's always really super cold. It normally snows.
I see your point, but I'm an absolute optimist and I'm not having it. Winter is a construct, it doesn't exist, and we're already into spring, so I'm skipping winter.
I feel like we all need to do that this year, Roy. So
every year.
Maybe we should just all agree with you.
every year. This year in particular.
January is my birthday month, which is really tough. Nobody ever has any money. Everyone's a bit miserable. The weather's rubbish. So maybe we should all just skip January and then I'll have a birthday later on in the summer.
You'll thank me for it, Kelly, believe me.
I'm with you. Thank you, Roy, for answering my questions. Roy, I want you to tell us about your agency that you run. So your agency is Synthetic. Tell me what you do.
So I run Synthetic. We are an emerging technology agency with a specialism in conversational AI. So what that means is we create conversations worth millions for our clients using chat, voice, messaging, all those AI-based concepts. We've been running it for about 4 years. Got in quite early into the space. Previously, we were a mobile agency, but niched down into conversational AI because it's a really growing space. Very interesting things happening across all those kind of areas from chat, voice, and messaging and so on. The platforms are getting bigger, social's getting bigger. Customers and clients both are using these platforms every day. And therefore, there's a massive opportunity for niche agencies in that space to kind of to help strategy, help to develop and help to maintain those kinds of platforms and those kind of activities.
So, and what kind of, like, give me an example of something that you've worked on that we can reference.
Sure. There's a couple of interesting ones. One on the kind of more entertainment side and maybe some more business related ones. So one of the first ones and the very successful we did a little while ago was a Robbie Williams virtual personality bot. So that was a fascinating project, actually. So we actually got some time with the man himself and went through it with his record company and so on. And that was to promote, I think about 2 albums ago, about 2016 we started that. That's still going, actually. It's one of the longest running, certainly messenger chatbots, the successful ones that's been around. So the idea being that, you know, it's a virtual personality. He is not obviously there. But when we started it, it's quite early in the kind of chat space and area. There were so many messages coming through saying, "Is this you? Tell me where you are. I'm going to show you something." And it got quite personal. It got quite personal, actually.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it did. At one point, we had I think we broke Facebook inbox. It was so popular, and this was, you know, one of those kind of small budget and small kind of, you know, time spent projects that had a massive footprint. So
it was a bit like as if you were messaging Robbie and you would get responses back from him.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and since then, obviously, lots has happened in that space around kind of virtual assistants, a lot more sort of reality around augmented reality and kind of replicas of people and, you know, digital twins and so on. So, but that was kind of where it started, and yeah, that was very successful, very popular. And still going, actually. Sort of a bit more up to date, we work with a number of large technology companies, one in particular. So we are doing a bunch of stuff with them around gamification and chat. So that's using the conversational piece to, in the SaaS space, actually, alongside HCM and CX in that space, where we're doing things like virtual events on chat, and we're doing some voice applications as well. And we're helping them to, customers are coming onto the website and using things like web chat to find out more about some of their products and then upselling from there. So chat and conversational AI with an ROI behind it.
And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So just for our listeners, Roy and I are both members of an agency networking group. So we're both members of Agency Nomics, and this is how we met. And I think Roy saw something that I posted about chatbots on LinkedIn, which spurred us to have a conversation about a few things. So some of you listening will have seen me speak at the Visitor Attractions Conference last year. And as part of our talk, we were talking about things that could improve the guest's user journey and guest experience online. And one of the things that we suggested was using a chatbot. I mean, chatbots are great. They can often give people information that they can't find that easily, or if you have a chatbot, you're freeing up someone else's time from having to kind of be on that and populating it themselves. And that's how we got talking. And I have to admit, after the talk in the Q&A session, I got a lot of questions about chatbots, and I thought, why don't I get Roy on to answer those questions, because he's an expert in it and I am not. Hence why you're on, Roy.
That's useful.
So I kind of want to talk about that kind of side of voice activation and voice kind of conversation around attractions. And I know that you have worked a little bit in that sector, and I wondered if you could give us your kind of your thoughts on them. And then maybe can we talk about how can attractions derive that kind of maximum value from using chatbots?
Just to set the scene a little bit, quite important to mention, I think, that, around the chat and conversational AI space, we're still very early into it. I mean, from our side, it feels like it's been going on forever. We're almost 5 years into this kind of space. So the questions that we still get are often quite fundamental questions of, can I give my my website, my product over to an AI? What's going to happen? What if they start making ridiculous claims and comments? Will people be able to use them? Are we lying to people because they're not talking to people? Is there any kind of brand damage that might happen? We get all these questions still quite a lot from the educational side, and that's across every sector, not just visitor attractions. That's everything from finance to healthcare, wellness, education, and so on. So the fundamentals still apply. So the first thing to say is, of course, we're still quite early into it, although we've been doing it for quite a while. So those questions do still apply. And then the second thing we often get as well is, how do you get started? Is it very difficult and complicated and therefore expensive? And it really isn't. Of course, anything as a piece of string can be, you can be using, very basic bots or very, very complex kind of integrated with your CRM system. So in essence, we are early into it. There are lots of use cases coming in that are ROI focused and kind of based in reality, which is great. But in terms of visitor attractions, the very basics of a museum or an attraction using an FAQ bot is a great place or a great example to start with.
Yeah.
So in essence, and that's very simple to do. So really, these are not large projects, and most attractions and most businesses will have most of the information to hand anyway, which is often in their call center scripts or on the FAQs or the questions being asked on the website, and indeed what's coming on an email, whether it's a kind of, a more analog process they have. So in the very basic version, it's not difficult for a site to spin up something on their current site based around their FAQs, and then use that kind of data that comes back in to understand what people are asking for. Because the beauty of those simple chatbot systems, of course, is that people are asking you actual questions. They're not, you don't have to use eye tracking software. You don't have to use Hotjar or something like that. You can actually get, people are actually asking you what they want. What time are you open? Will my discount voucher still apply because of COVID? Are you COVID safe? Things that have really been kind of popular last year.
So in its simplistic form, you are gathering data about what people need to find out about your organization.
It is, in essence, it is really like having a conversation with a customer. And that can be automated, of course. So you don't have to have your call center staff on board. You don't have to have your social team if you're a small business as well, with a single site attraction. This can all be automated very simply and very quickly. And that's a great place to start with this whole kind of AI space, if you like, because then you're going to get a load of data back, which will inform you as to what you might do next. The classic, what we call, think like a startup, kill or continue. So if you're getting a whole bunch of questions back and you've already answered, okay, maybe that isn't what you need to spend your time on. But if people are often, if your bot or if your site is failing on the certain questions of, maybe someone's asking a particular question all the time. Are you open? How do I get to you? How much is it? How much a ticket cost? Whatever, you can use that, and you'll find that we've got loads of data around how people use conversation versus how they use a website, and they'll spend more time basically on chatbots and they'll ask more questions. Side by side, apples with apples, than they will on website. We've seen that time and time again.
So the time that they'll spend talking to a bot will be longer than a browse time.
Yeah, often there's caveats around that, of course, but yeah, in essence, we see that a lot, because if you've and again, you don't have to brand it particularly excitingly, although keep away from female named assistants. I've got a massive bugbear about that. Let's get on to that later. But if you're not, you don't have to spend huge amounts of time as developing new characters or new kind of personas for your bot. If you've got a friendly open museum, visitor attraction, park, whatever, just use that. Answer the basic questions and use those questions to inform what you do next. And the other point of that is, the other important point is that, of course, if someone gets stuck or if they've got a major problem or it's a P1 or a high priority customer service question, you can always hand over to a live agent anyway. So there's loads of nuances around how you would do that and when you would do it. But these things are all very possible and very easy to integrate with whatever you're currently using in terms of your live chat.
Sounds really cool, doesn't it? Like, it sounds like something that everybody should be using.
I think people are often quite flummoxed by where to start and how easy it can be. Because it seems like it's a great thing to do, and everyone, of course, jumps in and goes, right, can we have a Robbie plus replica? Can we have someone in our chat? Can they be AR? Can they be this? And can they connect to all our systems? And Absolutely, it can, but you don't necessarily have to start there. So, and again, because the prevalence of chat and voice and all these technologies are happening and your customers are using them, it's not a big jump for them. So really, it's something you should be doing. You should be talking to your customers on the channels they're already using.
What would you say is the starting point? Because you talked a little bit about things to think about before you get started with this. Like, what should an organization be thinking about before they commit to something, or before they come and speak to you, for example?
It's very simple, really. I mean, you've got to pick your use case. So there's a bunch of things you could do and a bunch of things you should do. But what you absolutely must do is, set your KPI. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to, number one, reduce amount of hours spent with your social team on answering questions that could be very simply answered by a bot? Are you, number two, needing to increase sales by X%? And will this help us to do that? What do we do about it? How do we get involved in that? So first thing you need to do, understand what it is you're trying to do. In terms of the business KPIs. And then the second thing, of course, is that, leading on from that is prescribing it, which is a pre-post or after sales type scenario, or is it an engagement tool? So are we looking at, conversational AI in this instance? Are we using it for your website? So that's a pre-buy, someone's looking at your information, it's top of funnel, it's awareness. And that's one thing, and that can be driven through all the way through to the funnel to kind of booking. Or is it on the other side of the coin, when someone gets to your park, your attraction, or your museum, whatever it might be? Are you interacting more there with a character? Is there more things like treasure hunts? Is it something that's engaging in terms of dwell time? Are you upselling from there? So they're kind of separate things. Either can be started off very simply, but I think you need to ask yourself those simple kind of, one-page answers and questions, which are, what's the bot trying to do? What's the key audience? What does success look like? Very simple, basic questions you need to start with first. Yeah.
One of the questions that came up, there was quite a few questions actually at the Visitor Attractions Conference, but one that sticks in my mind was around social media. Was there a platform of some sort or something that would interact with people's social media, as well as people being able to ask questions on the website as well? I guess if you're building something bespoke for an organization, you can make it do pretty much whatever you want it to.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, anything with an API is integratable, basically. So in essence, yeah. So whether you want to ingest your Twitter feeds, or indeed a lot of the chats are actually social in themselves. So they don't have to be. And there's open and closed systems, of course. But for instance, Facebook, obviously everyone's aware of, would appear from all the things that we see that and not forgetting that Facebook own 3 of the biggest social platforms in the world, not just Facebook, of course they own Instagram, of course they own WhatsApp, and who knows what else. So, and they are moving into it seems like an integrated system where you can now message it, you can now use chatbots to an extent on Instagram. Messenger obviously is the platform for bots for Facebook, but again, WhatsApp being more private has had business beta on it and hasn't really broken in the Western countries as yet. It's massive in India, mind you, WhatsApp. So all these things are all possible, and you can build one system or one platform to interact on those as a single point of view. So yeah, it's all very possible from a social perspective. Yeah.
How about engaging with different demographics? So is there, in your experience, is there a certain age bracket that will interact more with a chatbot on a site? I think one of the questions was around kind of, our grandparents that are booking a trip with their grandkids, are they going to use this chatbot? Is it going to be helpful for them?
That is a very, very common question. It's a great question. Before I started in this whole space, I had the same question. Isn't this just for kids though? But actually kids aren't using Facebook, as you probably know. I've got a 14 and a half year old, nearly 20, going on 20 daughter. She hasn't touched Facebook in 4 years. Or for that matter, Instagram and WhatsApp. If you're not on TikTok or, some of the newer ones, you're kind of toast, really. We've got a ream of data around this, and you'll probably be quite surprised from the grandparent question that they're actually very capable and use Facebook in particular a lot, because that's how they communicate with their kids and grandkids. Yeah. So we see a huge spread. We thought the same thing actually a couple of years ago. Is this really for kids, and would anyone use it? And is it all opposite? If it's easy to use, that's a truism across any platform. If it's simple to use and you're being upfront about what it is and how you use it, it really does cross. There isn't a demographic we've seen that doesn't use it. So yeah, it's not skewed young in essence, no.
is it a case of if it's easy, anybody will use it? Or would an attraction have to put in any kind of work to get people to engage with it? Because I think that was something that people were a bit worried about, is committing to this and then it not being used. And would it need to be like, would they need to put this huge kind of drive behind encouraging people to use it?
So again, depending on what the use case is. So in very simple terms, for the kind of top of funnel awareness, and there is other ways of doing this, but your classic chatbot scenario is bottom right circle, on your website, which you select. And I think we're all pretty used to. There's loads of different ones out there from some of the big names like Drift and Intercom and so on, and some of the other platforms. So that is really a tap of a button to ask questions into a kind of FAQ. So that is, people are coming to your site anyway, or they're coming to your Facebook page, and that's how you interact anyway, or your Instagram now, and possibly WhatsApp and so on. So that's all kind of intrinsically baked in. In terms of on park or on site, slightly different scenario. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that you need to surface it. So if you're in the aquarium or whatever it might be, or London Bridge experience or whatever, front of house for something there they haven't seen it already, I think definitely part of your marketing in terms of if you're using an app already and there's a nice part of it which might be a chat related or kind of something you would engage with through the experience, I think so it really depends. I think the key though is ultimately is telling people about it, yes, but then making it really simple to use. And there's two things you want to do really. You don't want to take away from the experience itself, right? The reason they're there is to see fantastic ocean animals or go on roller coaster rides. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that some training or some at least some awareness from front of house staff would be important. If just to check in with people, have you seen X or Y? Have you seen we've got a new Dippy, for the museum, our new Dippy chatbot. Interact with it, you can find treasures. If you do the treasures, you get a discount or an offer or something. That kind of stuff is important, I think. But again, not taking away from the experience is really important, because let's face it, we and our kids as well spend enough time on screens, so it's got to add to the experience. And we're going through the experience of the attraction. Of course, not all attractions are end to end and kind of linear, but understanding whether it's just using a QR code or something simple, or being tripped by another kind of interactivity is important, and making those things short and sweet I think is important as well. Those interactions.
This was going to be like my kind of final roundup question to you, because we what we've focused on quite a bit is what I think is that kind of pre-attraction journey using chatbots. So people asking questions about, are you open? How much is the ticket price? I can't find this thing to be able to book. But actually, there's a lot that can be done in terms of voice strategies for attractions once you're at the attraction as well. Like, what kind of things could potentially attractions be looking at for that? I guess this is endless opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on the attraction, like I say, I mentioned, the kind of Dippy scenario where, are we looking through the museum at bones or artifacts, or using our voice to be hints around where to find things, and then more like an interactive treasure hunt scenario, I think is definitely useful. Making it engaging as well, because obviously moving into hopefully a post-COVID world soon, where things are back open again, as hopefully sooner rather than later, we're able to touch things, but maybe people don't want to. So I think it's going to be quite important that kind of touchless experience is probably more part of the experiences going forward than it has been.
Really good point.
That's going to be important. There's tons of things you can do, like you say, create new characters. Use some new technology like AR to kind of enhance. I've seen some great stuff around museum attractions around selfies, putting yourself into pictures and really engaging and immersing yourself, I think, in whatever you're looking around. I mean, my own personal favorite, which doesn't exist, I'm so disappointed that they stopped doing it, was in Audley End, the National Heritage.
I live right near Audley End. Okay. Yeah, we live in Saffron Walden. It's a great place.
I love Audley End. They used to have a Victorian sing-along at Christmas. I don't know if you ever went to it.
No, I've never been there. We moved here a couple of years ago. So
right, I think they stopped it about 3 or 4 years ago. And every time I go there, I'm so disappointed I don't do it, because you got a chance to go into the house and there were some people dressed up in Victoria. I thought, wow, that's what I want. I want a Victorian granddad bar. That's what they're missing,
yes.
Right? I honestly do. I might just go and do it anyway, because it's a fantastic idea. That kind of interaction and engagement, these things and these character-driven kind of experiences around AI, again, they can be quite complex. They're not that difficult to start, but again, it just adds to the kind of fun, doesn't it? And again, the important point, I think, is is not just to have that on park. So there's any kind of brand and merchandise extensions that are possible in terms of licensing, etc. So if you're, Dippy's a good example, or maybe Ordland's a bad example, but there's certainly plenty of character-driven attractions for that, where you can extend out more and you can have more engagement from people outside of visiting the attraction. And again, it could just be that you have a conversation starting, you're able to talk to people, re-engage, and that might be, did you know we're open? Why don't you come along and have a 2-for-1 offer? And these aren't digital printed tickets. They can go into an existing app they've got. It can go onto social, go onto the bot itself. So lots of opportunities, I think, commercially speaking, that aren't really being utilized that well because we're quite early into it. And again, I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say, I think that in the visitor attraction kind of space, there's huge opportunities because for people to steal a march on the competitors, to be honest, because not many people are doing it and doing it well. So there's massive opportunity. The audiences are definitely there. We know that. We're going to reopen again soon. And even before reopening, it's a brilliant way to engage people and not particularly, I wouldn't say cost neutral, but it's not particularly expensive to get these things started. If you go in with an MVP, think like a startup mindset.
Yep, totally agree with that. I totally agree with the idea that there is endless possibilities and huge opportunities at the moment. I love what you talked about. Like the end example is a really great example, actually, because it is about, it's about putting you into that experience, isn't it? It's about, it's complementary to it. It enhances the experience. It doesn't take away from it or distract you from what's actually happening there at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I was also just thinking about audio as well. And again, just simple things. And this isn't necessarily around conversational, but, just ahead of us having a chat, just thinking about things like, some of the more ride-based attractions, and whether this has been done or not. And using audio is massive. Obviously, podcasts are massive. Audio content's massive. Alexa and Google and so on are massive. And, just simple things like those additional engagements of those, for instance, Spotify or Alexa playlists of, you go into Alton Towers in a month's time. You're really excited about it. Here's the terror list with Ride on Time and songs from TerrorVision and Screamadelica. Why are we doing that? This is not difficult to do. And you can incorporate audio and AI and conversation to all these things. And there's so many good opportunities, I think, for this. And I think there's I think the brands that jump on this and the attractors that jump on this will they're putting themselves in a good spot, I think.
That's such a great idea. What is your attractions playlist? That's what I want everyone to tweet me. What would be on your attractions playlist?
You can't use Screamadelica. I've used that. Try and get an example that's more under 30 years old. I think one earlier I couldn't.
Well, this one's not under 30 years. Well, no, it is. But I always think about there's the Rock and Roller Coaster at Disney, and it plays Aerosmith, and it's such a great song. Dude, it's like a lady, and it just I just have got such great memories, and every time I hear that song, I instantly get transported back to that attraction. It would be really cool, wouldn't it, to have like your playlist from your favorite attractions?
It'd be great. I mean, just before we wrap up, Kelly, as well. I mean, just on a personal note, I'm a heavy my family, we are heavy attraction users. I was talking to my wife earlier, and I think we count, even though on COVID, I think we counted up about 30 attractions last year. We did.
Nice. And
we generally do around 40 plus, and that's everything from the obvious big ones, the Alton Towers and so on, to we were into Portsmouth, into the Mary Rose and the dockyards. We did Spilliker Tower, we did Woburn Safari, Stratford upon Avon, the Shakespeare museums, and I did one interestingly just before Christmas, the Silverstone experience. I don't know if you've done it.
No, I haven't yet. I should, because it's not that far from where we are.
It was actually really good. I'm not a huge Formula One fan, but I know lots of people are. But I took the kids out there, and my wife came as well, and you get to drive on the track. And it's very slow, but they've got a lot of lights on. It's fantastic, actually. But cool. And there was a Silverstone radio station which you could turn on, and they play some tunes. But I thought they were missing a huge trick around around interactivity. They should have had a very simple point and click web AR, which you can do very easily now, right? Which is, you're all going very slowly up the grid. Why they didn't have sounds popping and people revving their engines like Lewis Hamilton on the grid is beyond me.
Really build that atmosphere of it. Yeah,
exactly. Roll your phone over the traffic lights, agree, the red, amber, green, and then show it off, and then you can have James Hunt. It just missed a big trick there, and none of this is difficult. Whether you could just point your thing at the stands, and you can have the voice of Murray Walker or whatever it is from the F1 fans. These interactivity things again are not difficult,
Well, I mean, they might be listening, Roy, so
They should.
You could get a call. Call Roy.
Call
On that note, if you do want to know a bit more about Roy and what he does at Synthetic, then there's loads of places you can look. So you've got loads of really great articles on your website, syntheticagency.co. Now, there's a couple of really specific articles that are really useful to this conversation. So you've got 10 simple tips on bot strategy and design.
Yep.
And you've got a case study around Oracle chatbots as well. And there's just some really, really useful information. If you want to carry this conversation on, that's the best place to go. And actually, Roy, you've got a podcast as well, haven't you? It
is called Conversations Worth Millions.
Love
so
it.
In essence, conversationsworthmillions.com is the URL. But because I'm amazing at SEO as well, if you type in Conversations Worth Millions into Google, every result on the homepage will be my podcast. If it isn't, my OCD is going to go mental.
Okay, well, let's test this. So, yeah, if you want to listen to a bit more about this topic, then Conversations Worth Millions is what you type into Google, and as Roy said, you should find everything that you need. Roy, last question for you. I always ask all of our guests to recommend a book, and it can be a book that you love it personally, or it could be a book that you've that's kind of helped shape your career in some way. So have you got a recommendation for us today?
Can I just make one small comment before I tell you what book it is? My second unpopular opinion is that you can read too much.
Okay, yeah.
I'm a doer. My final parting shot on that is don't just consume, create. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, do you know what? I agree. And don't just read self-help books. I think there's a lot of people who just who consume self-help business book after the other. Go read some fiction as well, or some biographies. Correct. Mix it up.
Speaking of self-help, I've got one for you.
Good.
You'll like this. Okay, so this one it's a bit of a mouthful for a name. It's brand new. I don't know if you've seen it. So this is the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Have you seen it?
No, haven't.
Okay, so I'll give you a quick précis of what it says on the back cover. So it says, "Getting rich is not just about luck. Happiness is not just a trait we are born with." So, in essence, what this is Naval is very famous on Twitter. He's a VC and a bit of a lifestyle guru and so on, and a tech guru too. He wrote quite a again famous tweet about a year and a half ago on why getting rich isn't just about money. And someone took those as a Twitter thread of it was a massive Twitter thread of maybe 50 tweets. Someone took those tweets and turned it into a book, which I thought for a couple of reasons was fantastic. First of all, to be able to spin a book out of 15 tweets is really interesting, and actually the lessons in it I think are actually quite powerful. So that's my recommendation: the Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Great, good. That is a good choice. As ever, if you would like to win a copy of this book, we offer it as a prize. So all you need to do is head over to our Twitter account, which is Skip the Queue, if you just search for that on Twitter. And then if you retweet this episode announcement with the words, "I want Roy's books," then you will be put into a prize draw to potentially win it. Roy, thank you. I've really enjoyed this chat. Thanks for coming on and for sharing your knowledge about this topic. Please, everyone, go and subscribe to Roy's podcast, The Conversations Worth Millions. If you are interested in what we've been talking about today, it's a wealth of knowledge there, and I would definitely check out Roy's website too. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find us. And remember to follow us on Twitter for your chance to win the books that have been mentioned. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcriptions from this episode and more over on our website, rubbercheese.com/podcast.